Hello and welcome to another episode of The Crazy Maker Nerd. I'm Luke and that's
Amy.
That's my fiance. And today I set her the challenge.
Wonky.
I set her the challenge of going to Poundland and picking out some random items for me to turn into wargaming terrain.
I'm excited.
I'm concerned. So, bring out the bag. Do you wanna like me to close my eyes with which items?
Okay, yeah, I think you closing your eyes would be good because then you can try and guess what it is. And it
Right.
does start off, it seems like a little bit of a theme, but then
How many items are there?
4.
Okay.
You gave me £6
£6.
and I bought 4 things and a bag of sweet. I hit my budget, but I still had the £6, so I thought, oh.
Okay. Item 1.
Let's start with this one. Ready?
Well then. I'm a bit worried about the shape.
I reckon that will make life a lot easier for you.
Oh, I know.
What is it?
It's a roll of grass.
Yes, it is a rod of grass. Actually, my friend, who's a primary school teacher, bought loads of these before, so I knew that Poundland had this. It was the first thing I went for.
Okay. I'm getting like raptor vibes out of that. Yeah, long grass, because the guys are tiny.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Forgot about that. Oh, well.
Forgot about scale. This is going to be fun. Okay, item number 2. Drum roll, please.
Do I do the drum roll?
No, I'll do it in post.
Oh, okay.
You can if you want.
Oh, I've got my hands in a bag. It would just be... Let's go with this one. Oh, I want... Hang on.
Just broken it already.
Yeah, kind of. There we go.
Broken like my dreams.
There you are. I wonder... What is all this? Oh. Don't push too hard.
I got no clue, but I'm a bit worried what I just squished on. Okay.
It's sheep!
I have something really cool to show you. Look, it's a sheep.
Okay.
But now I realise that these are going to be massive in comparison to your little guys.
They will not end as sheep.
Aw, why?
I don't think there's sheep in the far future.
Why not?
Well, there's only war.
You need sheep in war. Where are all your clothes going to come from?
Next item.
Come. Ready for this one? Oh yeah, I need to show it first. So I picked this one purely for the name, which you can just see there at the very bottom. There we go. Right, you'll know what it is roughly from the shape.
HotWheels?
Hmm?
Yeah. That's a truck.
But look at the name of it.
Boxilla.
I thought it might inspire you a little bit.
Yeah. Inspire in bogs.
Yeah, well, you got the grass, you got the sheep.
In fairness, it does look like it could be a Warhammer scale with one person.
I knew.
So
I meant to do that.
Orky
I knew what I was
vibes?
doing. Right, and then last one, and then I'll put the bag down. Close your eyes. Ready?
I was born ready.
I'm actually really surprised this form is a pound because, I mean, looking at it. Ready?
Yeah.
And now this is where I worry about scale.
There's wheels.
Yes.
Is that a bike thing?
It is a bike.
Oh my.
Yeah, I forgot about the scale.
I mean,
That's going to be ginormous.
I think it's gonna go Orky.
I think you need the dial-up sound as you were just looking at all of the items then.
What were you thinking?
There were no thoughts.
Pretty evident that this is stuff.
I was just thinking this will be fun. See what
Okay.
it comes up with. I have no clue about Warhammer.
The car, the grass, I know what to do with. The sheep are a wild card. Right. Thank you very much for your input.
That's alright. I'm gonna go and eat my sweets now. Our sweets. I'm gonna go and eat some of our sweets and leave them for you. Maybe.
Right, let's get cracking.
I began by going online and doing some research into the most kit-bashed models in Warhammer 40K. It didn't take very long for me to realise that this was Orks, which I kind of guessed already, but it's good to have some confirmation. Look at these sweet kit bashes. So cool. And then started to look at some more distinct items such as bikes and trucks. And I found two brilliant models that I thought, let's make my own version of those. So I quickly looked up their base sizes, which luckily was exactly the same. Found some on Maker World, shout out to the creator. Downloaded them, opened them in 3D print software, and put them onto print. I also realised that I must have got rid of all of my Ork models, so I found some online and put those on the DLP printer. Once they were printed, I washed them off, cleaned them up with a file in all those hard to get spaces, and then I brought out all the materials Amy had given me. I had a good idea that I wanted to use the grass as a basing material, and that I probably wanted to use the vehicles from both of the toys. But I don't think that dinosaur's gonna do, so off it comes. I started by disassembling all of the components of the dinosaur until I could get it off, and then put everything back together. This left me with a nice blank slate and a trike to use. Next up was the truck. And straight away, I already knew I had some 3D printed wheels that would do perfectly. So one by one, I pulled off all those wheels, which were a bit of a pain to do. Then I started to play around with the Orks that I printed, trying to work out which ones would go where and what order to put them on in. Once I had a good idea, I had a great idea of putting some spiked edges onto the wheels. Now, those Hot Wheel wheels were the perfect size, so out they came, and I cut up some spikes using some cardboard and scissors, which would then wrap around them. I glued the first one on, and I loved it. So I moved on and started on the second one, gluing that one on when it was finished. Then I hit a bit of a sore subject and got out the saw. And I had to chop off the hand of the boss to be able to put on the cybernetic hand. And then drilled out a hole and placed a pin inside with some glue to then stick it all together. Nice. I then had the great idea that I'd probably remove the squig that was attached to him. So I sawed that off and sanded down the foot. Next up, I pulled out the cardboard again and I started to make random shapes with jaggedy edges and sticking them all over the bike. I love this really iconic aesthetic with Orks, it just looks really cool. So I went fully to town. I also had the idea of extending the bike a bit longer so I could get the Warboss on and the Grok behind. So I added these bits of plastic which were left over from a gun turret years ago, and then I covered the whole thing in lots of balsa wood which I snapped into small pieces. This added a bit more depth and texture to the bike, making it look a little bit more orky and a little bit more thrown together out of a load of scraps. Now back to the foot that I just took the squig off of. I thought it'd be a cool idea if you had a box to put his foot up on so that he stayed in the same pose. So I made a small box made out of balsa wood, gluing it all together and then cutting off a ridge so that his foot would sit perfectly flush. I then carried on adding more balsa wood, and adding more balsa wood, and funnily enough, adding some more balsa wood, sticking it down quite often and then trimming it afterwards with the snips. There was also some fun controls that I'd made out of resin from Green Stuff World's molds absolutely years ago, so I pulled one of those out and stuck it onto the dashboard, once again surrounding it with some more balsa wood. Do you see a pattern here? And that, I think, is the bike. So I stacked up all of the models on top, and yeah, I was really happy with how it's starting to look. Now pulling out the truck and all 4 3D printed monster truck tyres. Now, of course, they didn't actually have any wheels in them, so to get around this, I pulled out some 25mm bases and glued them on top. Next up were drilling the holes in these bases for the axles front and rear. The idea was to take a wooden dowel and be able to stick it inside the hole, cut it down to the right length, and then join it to the other wheel. The first one seemed to turn out alright, so I made up both axles in this method. Next I removed those very small wheel arches from the model toy car because I don't think these monster truck wheels are going to fit. Back to the axles, I then attached some small wooden dowels either side to make it look like there was a bit more going on. Next up, I need to find a way to actually join the axles together with a new main body. To do this, I got some really thick balsa wood and cut it down with a knife. Then, once it was cut down, I glued it to both axles, tested the fit with the model car, and then cut a small angle up to the car so it didn't look like just a box underneath. Once I was happy, I then glued the model toy car on top and started construction of some, let's say, rather large wheel arches. These are once again made out of 6mm planks of balsa wood, which were then glued together to create a new surface. After gluing the parts down, I then trimmed everything so it was nice and flush, so it looked a little bit more intended. Now, that balsa wood on the underside joining the axles doesn't quite look right, so I felt like it was a good idea to get some of the corrugated card I had left over and glue it all the way along. Kind of looks a bit like a track, but it's not really a track. Now I just covered the whole thing in balsa wood, some more balsa wood, and actually some corrugated card this time to add a bit of extra variety to the texture. I then started to look at the model and felt like it needed a little bit more detail around on those wheels, as they were a little bit plain. So I went into my spare parts box, found a couple of lids from what I'd assume would be a tank, and some extra greebles to go on the dashboard. I then remembered I had these fire hydrants that I bought from Salute a few years ago, and I thought they looked pretty cool sticking out of the side as if they were big bollards being used to whack into other vehicles. I then glued on a bear trap on the back
for extra spiky bits.
I also attached a pair of binoculars and some kind of exhaust shape. That then got me thinking, what about these hollow tubes? So I attached 2 to the motorbike to be the exhaust. Now I moved on to making sure that all the guys could actually fit. Firstly, I snipped off a large amount of chunks from this miniature, probably far too many, and then tried to place him inside. I worked out that I had to disconnect all of the legs and arms and then re-pin and glue them in the right position so that he could actually get inside the truck. With lots of trial, error, snipping, gluing, filing that booty, I finally got to the point where he would actually fit inside the truck. And yeah, it looks pretty cool in there. Next up, I was then going to modify all of the orks to go on the bike. Once again, I started by snipping off all of the arms and legs of the poor driver. Then drilling, pinning, sticking, activating, sanding, everything until it fitted perfectly. Each appendage was put on one at a time and then placed on the bike to check that it actually fitted. To speed up the process, I use Superglue Activator, and to fill the gaps between the appendages and the body, I use some Superglue and then activate it very quickly. This sort of creates a firm piece that you can then sand down. Now moving back to the bike and the truck, knowing that they're almost ready for paint, I've covered them in a mixture of Mod Podge and water to create a nice firm surface for the paint to cling to later on. They were then left to dry, and I moved on to making the bases. Taking the 150mm 3D printed bases, I glued them down using super glue and activator to the fake grass. Once glued down, I then cut around the edges and stuck down any loose bits afterwards. Now for a quick tidy up using the vacuum. Because some of the grass is a bit loose, I used some matte sealing spray to hold it all down. Once the bases were dry enough to touch again, I used some light moulding paste around the circumference of all of the bases. Finally, to make sure that the moulding paste blended in well with the grass, I used a wetted sacrificial paintbrush to smooth it all out and give it that stippling effect on the edge. Once it was dry, I unfolded the spray booth and selected the paints that I was going to use for the palette of the piece. I began by spraying Warboss green all over the bases. This is as close to Goblin Green as it can get at the moment with a decent coverage. And then when that was dry, I swapped over to Coat Darm's Goblin Green to bring out that vibrant colour. I also base coated all of the orks in the Goblin Green, and then moved on to using matte black all over the vehicles. This was to make sure that all of those recessed shaded spots were nice and dark, so I didn't have to keep pushing my paintbrush into all the nooks and crannies. The aim for this project is to not use any form of wash over the vehicles to try and make them look a little bit more cartoon-like. Next up, I brushed on Royal Purple, which is a metallic paint from Army Painter. I applied this to both the truck and to the trike, making sure to get in all of the areas but not pushing the paintbrush into the crevices. I then dry brushed silver all over the areas that I wanted to remain silver on both of the models. Moving back to the bases, I used Flash Git's yellow to dry brush all over the top of the high points. This was to try and emulate that 1990s style Games Workshop basing. And I think it did a pretty good job. I then dry brushed all of the tyres on both the vehicles as well to make it look like they've got that grass burn like you get with jeans when you slide in the preschool playground and hurt yourself. Come on, you did that too. Next up, I got out a colour similar to Emperor's Children and decided to cover all of the edges using this as an edge highlight. I also added some odd scratches here and there to try and make it look like it was a little bit dinged. And I went backwards and forwards quite a few times with some silver to pick out spaces where the characters standing on the vehicles might have scratched the paint away. And it was a general flip-flopping backwards and forwards between these colours until I was happy. And then repeated the process on the truck as well, once again started with the bright, luminous pink, but this time I cut back on the scratches a little bit, only focusing on those edge highlights. Next up, the silver came back out, and I went over all of the points on the truck and the bike that silver should have been shown all the way through, such as the bull bars, the bear trap, any other
Sharp, spiky bits.
and then used a little bit of black here and there to darken some areas. And then
There may be a situation here in which a serious mistake was made.
this happened. I shouldn't have used this blue.
Ugh. Brother, ugh.
Yeah, not very tasteful.
No! God, please, no! No!
Next up, I used a bit of red to add a bit more
Speed to my bike. Into my truck too.
I kind of used it as a similar to edge highlight to the pink, but also did some details as well. Next up, I got out the white on all of the lights and all of the binnacles inside the cockpits. And the wing mirrors. Again, yeah.
What the were you thinking?
I don't know, Ron. I don't know. Now I made my own brown because I already had the colours on the palette anyway, and decided to pick out all those little details on the seat on the inside of the truck, just to make it look like some worn leather. Putting out a little bit more black, I mixed it in with a silver, and instead of using a wash, I actually used this to go in between all of the silver details to try and add a little bit more definition. And then I flipped back to the white and I realised I had Monster Truck written on all of the wheels. So I highlighted all of these over and over again until they were nice and vibrant and you could read it from miles away. More silver. Yeah, I decided to bin that idea. Got rid of that blue and went over it with the silver. I think for good reason. But I did think that the blue would make a good way of making the exhaust look used, so I added a little bit to the tips. Next I used a contrast paint which was yellow just to bring out some vibrantness on all of those lights and binnacles again. Once I'd done the trike's light, I also added a little bit more white in the centre to give it a bit more of a highlight. I also added a bit more dry brushing to the wheels, and then moved on to painting the characters. I tried to do this colour by colour, so I started off by painting all of the red sections on the models, piece by piece, because, you know, red for speed, right?
And we got to be fast.
Whilst the red was out, I mixed it with some of the white I used earlier and coloured in all the tongues. Then I was flip-flopping between brown and red for a while, highlighting all of those nice leathery bits and the rest of the red that I've missed. I also painted the silver, black boots, I used an earthy tone for any horny bits, and some yellow for some highlights. I then moved on to many coats of white all over things like the trousers and the odd bits here and there. And then flip-flop between colours again, just highlighting the odd bit, going between all the colours I'd previously used. Now, I did use wash all over the miniatures, and this was just because I didn't want to spend ages painting them. Washes are brilliant for minis, and I love them so much. Once all the wash was dry, I started highlighting in all of the base coats again, starting off with the greens, using some yellows, reds, silvers. And then I started mixing in some whites, a little bit of yellow into the red to bring it out to a bit more orangey tones, and I kept layering them over and over again until I was happy with the result. I then started to add a little bit of yellow to the green tint, and this was really nice. It brought out a lot more of those highlights that you previously couldn't see, and it kind of matched the bike's aesthetic with looking a bit more comic book. Now that they're all painted up, I glued them all down to their final positions. I unfortunately had to remake the stand for this little guy's gun and paint it silver because I'd accidentally snapped it off. Then I covered everything in a good dose of blood because, you know, collateral damage and all that.
You need sheep in war.
And as Amy said, yeah, you do need sheep, but not as sheep anymore. So I took their heads off, removed the polystyrene ball from inside, shaped them and stuck them onto and into all of the exhausts. So they become this really cool smoke effect with minimal effort. And I glued them all down. Did a bit of admiring because, you know, it looked pretty cool. Yeah, that's that. So, Amy, I have completed the build using all the parts you got from Poundland.
Yeah.
I used every single thing that you've got.
Alright, okay.
Even the sheep.
Yeah, that was my first thought.
Yeah.
Are you going to use the sheep?
The sheep have been used.
Okay.
You definitely haven't seen that part of the process.
No, I haven't.
So, I'm going to do the big reveal now. Are you ready?
I guess I have to be. What? There's no sheep there.
Yeah, there is. Where is the sheep?
It's not a sheep anymore.
No, it's not a sheep anymore. So there we go, from Poundland budget buys to Orks. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you know when the next video comes up. If you have any requests or any feedback, please post it all below. I'd love to hear your feedback and I'd like to know where I can improve. So until next time, see you later my nerds.
I love the metallic. There's a sad little sheep.
Smell smoke.
Well, it doesn't look like it to me because I know it's a sheep. I'm assuming that it's been sucked into the pipe.
Oh, right. Why are you still here? Go build some stuff.